Hello and welcome to Liberty Nation TV with your host, Jeff Charles. Last week, the nation found out that the Abbott Express isn't stopping anytime soon after Florida Governor Ron DeSantis joined Governor Greg Abbott in his endeavor to bring the border to the blue cities that support the policies that led to the migrant crisis we are experiencing today. Residents of Martha's Vineyard got quite a shock when 50 migrants showed up on their doorstep, courtesy of Governor DeSantis. But how long will this saga last? I have with me Liberty Nation's national columnist, Sarah Cowgill, to discuss. Welcome to the program, Sarah.
Thanks for having me, Jeff. Always good to be here.
Yes, and so your column is always nice to read about the Heartlanders to kind of keep up with what's going on in flyover country. So I wanted to get an idea. What do the Heartlanders think of this whole immigration kerfuffle last week?
There's lots of good comments, lots of laughter about this. You know, Heartlanders have always had a seasonal influx of migrant workers. So, you know, it's not a racial thing as much as it is an in-your-face thing. And so they've been, you know, letting everybody know that it's about time they got a taste of their own medicine. So Heartlanders are kind of having a good week with the whole Martha's Vineyard thing.
Yeah, I bet. And I'm sure border towns are as well.
Well, yeah, border towns are getting a little bit of a relief from, you know, the last 10 years. So yeah, they're feeling a little bit better down south.
Yeah, and I'm sure they're pointing and laughing a little bit. They have to be, because I mean, I'm in Texas, so I mean, a lot, even though it's not all of our towns are on the border, a lot of them are basically border towns because they're being shipped all over the place in the Lone Star State. So a lot of us are getting a real kick out of this.
Absolutely. And you should be. I mean, I have friends in Del Rio, and they're like, it's about time somebody decided to ship some folks off and let people know how hard this is on our community. I mean, they're tiny towns down there, and they don't have those resources, and they're just being hammered.
Exactly, and they have been for the past year and a half. But Democrats are, you know, what they're doing is they're striking back by pretending that Abbott and DeSantis and also Arizona Governor Doug Ducey are engaging in human trafficking or kidnapping. Now, I'm sure that they're not fooling the Heartlanders with this stuff, but do you think they're fooling anybody with these allegations?
No, they're not fooling anybody, but that doesn't mean that people who listen to the left biased news channels, and that's where they get their only source of news, they're going to pick that up and just start, you know, parroting whatever CNN or MSNBC or NPR tells them to say. So, you know, I don't think it's going to fool anybody. And nobody's, you know, the Democrats have not seemed to care too much about human trafficking in the past. So why would they pick it up now as anything that they want to take a stand on?
Yeah, but what's interesting to me, Sarah, especially with the human trafficking aspect of this, right? Now, I know a lot of them, I give them the benefit of the doubt. I think that a lot of them don't really know what human trafficking is because a lot of people in general don't know what it is. But for the ones who do, because I'm sure they do, like the fact that they're bringing up human trafficking when there are actual victims whose lives are destroyed by this practice. You know, I have a friend who's an activist and human trafficking activist, and she's an influencer, and she had to like really hold back from letting these people have it because they're taking something that is basically modern day slavery. People are being victimized, and they're almost downplaying it to attack people they don't like.
Well, absolutely. And you know, the other thing is what people are forgetting is that not that long ago, Joe Biden was putting migrants on planes and dropping migrants in all sorts of cities around the country under the cover of darkness. I mean, if Abbott is putting people on buses or planes and letting people know about it, there's a transparency there. It's a comparison to each different, you know, mindset of how to deal with illegal and just random immigration. And I think what we've seen here is that, the Biden administration is very secretive. They don't want anybody to know what they're doing or how they're doing it unless they are, leading the storylines. So when people find out about this, they're not going to find out, next month that, oh my goodness, Ron DeSantis paid for, a plane to fly into Martha's Vineyard. They're not going to find about that now. Heck, they've been telling people this is what we're doing. And it's about time, you guys share in our, burden. And it is a burden. It's sad and it's a humanitarian problem, but it's a border crisis. And it's a huge burden on just the American public that lives on that southern border.
Yeah, you're right, especially when you bring up transparency, right? I mean, I remember in the early months of the migrant crisis, even the activist media was criticizing the Biden administration for its lack of transparency, especially regarding the unaccompanied minors that would be holding in shelters. So, I mean, if they're willing to go that far, if it got to them that much, even them, then we know that this administration is not on the up and up. I mean, it just doesn't seem like it. I mean, it doesn't seem like they've even lifted a finger to really deal with this issue. Instead, they just reverse all of Trump's policies and didn't replace them with anything that would secure the border.
No, it just made a bigger mess. And now it's like, you want to sweep this under the rug, or do we want to just really sweep it out the door? And instead, they won't admit. This administration will not admit if they do anything wrong, and they have done a lot of things wrong. And on the top of my list of the things they've done wrong is immigration. I mean, it's a giant mess. And I used to live in a border, kind of not a border town, but in a border state, and spent several years in the Southwest. And I can tell you, these people are wore out. They're just wore out.
Yeah, I believe that. Now, so here, with this whole Martha's Vineyard fiasco, this one really tickled me. There was a reporter from Telemundo, and she gave a report in which she said many of the residents told her privately that they were angry with all these brown people showing up in their community. Now, I'm sure they didn't use the word brown people. I'm sticking that in there, but still, they weren't happy about it, but they wouldn't say so publicly. Now, so they have these attitudes, but they're not going to get in front of a camera and say it. Do you think this kind of behavior is an outlier among progressives, especially white progressives, or do you think it might be indicative of the overall attitude that white progressives have in general towards brown people?
I don't see it being a thing of color. I don't think it's a color issue. I think the racism that is being displayed for everyone to see is poverty versus wealth. And Martha's Vineyard obviously is a very wealthy enclave for people like the Obamas and everybody who's ever made a couple of million or $1 billion. I mean, people vacation there. They have homes there that they're never in. 63% of the time those homes sit empty. Us normal people can't afford things like that. So what they're doing is, they got their little binoculars out and they're like, well, is she wearing a maid's uniform? Is she coming to work, or is this somebody we got to deal with? It's all about how much money the people who live there have versus the people that they now have to take care of. How are we going to do that? We don't have any resources. We don't have any places to put these people. I mean, they don't prepare. They don't prepare for, an influx of poor people. They don't have homeless shelters or food pantries or, different places where people can seek assistance. Because they're too rich. They don't even know what to do with their money.
That's true. And I think you might be right. I mean, they may have the same reaction if Jed Clampett or Billy Bob showed up. But I do think that this is indicative of their tendency to support policies that they don't think will ever affect them. This isn't the only one. I mean, you look at the defund the police movement, like the defund the police movement, they wanted fewer officers on the streets. Now, I know they didn't all want that, but that's what they were supporting, less officers on the streets, because they know it's not going to impact them. When the crime rates surged, they didn't come to their gated communities. Beverly Hills didn't have to worry about rising crime rates.
Right.
It was the very people that they pretend to protect. And I'll throw race in there because that's what they did. They say this is going to protect Black people. No, it actually killed a lot of Black people. So as long as it doesn't show up at their doorstep, they're fine. So, I mean, this is just a prime example. What do you think?
This is a perfect example. They're clueless and they're pandering for votes. So that's why they do what they do. They look sympathetic. in the eyes of people. They want to look sympathetic, but they're not, and they don't understand. They have armed security wherever they go. They don't, worry about somebody breaking into their Martha's Vineyard, mansion on their 29-acre plot without, they don't worry about that. You can defund the police all day long because I've got my own security. You can ship migrants anywhere but my backyard. And this is a classic case of the NIMBYs, not in my backyard. And they don't want it. They can't handle it. How can you not handle 50 people coming into one of the wealthiest communities in the United States? You could stick 50 people in somebody's guest house there, probably, and set up cots. I mean, this would be a prime example of, walking the talk. If you're on Martha's Vineyard, come to my house. I'll open the guest house. You are welcome here. But they're so busy trying to figure out how to get rid of them and raising money on GoFundMe because they don't have an emergency fund because they don't need one. And really, they could all flip out a wallet and hand over what's in that wallet and take care of the entire crisis for 50 people.
Of course, definitely. So, Sarah, I want to talk about the future for this last question. I think that these recent moves on the part of Greg Abbott and DeSantis show that this whole thing isn't just a short-lived political stunt. It is a stunt, but this isn't just some flash in the pan. Both Abbott and DeSantis indicated that they will be escalating this, that there's going to be more of this. I expect Greg Abbott to expand his efforts even beyond Chicago, New York City, DC. I mean, I'm hoping he goes to Los Angeles or San Francisco. But here's my question. How long do you think it might take for Democrats to finally get to the breaking point to where they don't want to deal with this anymore, and then they start actually holding President Biden accountable?
Well, they're losing their minds on Martha's Vineyard over 50 people. So I think it's imminent. I don't think we're going to have to wait long. I don't think it's going to be a public spectacle. I think there will be a lot of, backdoor deals and phone calls that aren't reported or recorded. And we will see that these border state governors are going to continue to do what they do. And it's making them a little more powerful and a little more visible to the rest of this nation. So people who may or may not have known who Greg Abbott was, everybody knows who he is now. Everybody knows Ron DeSantis now. And so they're growing stronger and stronger and stronger, while the other, the other side of the aisle, the Biden administration, is looking weaker, and more hypocritical.
Yeah, I mean, no matter what people think of what Abbott and DeSantis are doing, in that report from that Telemundo reporter, she also said some of those residents blamed Biden more than Abbott and DeSantis. So I think you're right, and I'm glad that you brought up the point that they're probably not going to pressure Biden publicly. It's going to be through the back channels, and maybe some of it will get leaked, but we're not going to know the full, the fullness of those conversations. But if it's going to happen, I think that's how it's going to happen. Definitely.
Yeah, I can't see there being any kind of a public stance against this president. I do see that he will somehow show up in front of a podium somewhere and struggle but explain why, he's the humanitarian crisis handler of all time and have a solution to this. But in the meantime, I see that people are slinging arrows at the guy, and they should be. His own party is upset. The Republicans are upset. Immigration is a beyond crisis at this point. It's a natural disaster. And instead of dealing with it, they have just swept it under the rug again, and it needs to be vacuumed up and the bag needs to be taken out to the trash. You can't keep rerouting people's lives. You can't put the burden on Americans. You can't drag these people all over the place that are trying to find just a better life. You got to have a solution for them. And this administration does not have a immigration solution.
Big facts right there. But hopefully something positive will come up at least before 2024 when it concerns the migrant crisis. But we'll be keeping an eye on that. And until next time, thanks for joining the program, Sarah.
Oh, anytime, Jeff. Always a pleasure.
And remember, the show is proudly sponsored by LibertyNation.com, where you can access podcasts, breaking news and analysis, and a range of biting and brilliant shows to whet your appetite for freedom and your fondness for the great American Constitution. Just go to LibertyNation.com on your browser, or hit Rumble, YouTube, or check out our Liberty Nation News Roku channel. I'm Jeff Charles. Thank you so much for watching. This program is a production of LibertyNation.com, where truth is making a comeback.
Entertaining, informative, and just plain fun. Watch Liberty Nation's The Conservative 5. Produced by conservatives for conservatives. C5's The Left Free Zone. Hosted by Liberty Nation's Lisa K. Donner. Joined by a raucous, irreverent panel of authors. Deconstructing leftist narratives. Debating the hot topics. And remembering to laugh. Join the official conservative safe space.
You only did that to piss Jeff off.
Liberty Nation's The Conservative 5.